Robert De Niro stood on that live stage, eyes burning with rage. He stared straight into the camera and called Donald Trump dumb, with no hesitation and no filter. The entire studio froze. Every face turned blank. That single word from De Niro cut through the air like a knife. And in that moment, silence screamed louder than applause. This was not just a celebrity's opinion. It was a war cry. Before we move forward, subscribe now, because what comes next will leave you stunned. What happened after that moment was not just drama. It was history. People watching from home did not blink. They leaned in, phones buzzing with notifications. Clips began to fly across every platform. But behind the curtain, something was already shifting. Someone was watching, someone who would not stay silent. That man was JD Vance. De Niro did not stop. He spoke of how the country had fallen, how lies had become normal, how truth no longer mattered. He said Trump was not just dumb, he was dangerous. But even before his mic went cold, a storm had already started building backstage. JD Vance, a man with a voice just as sharp, just as loud, walked to the edge of that chaos. And he came ready. This was no random argument. It was not a publicity stunt. What unfolded was personal. De Niro stood for a world that believed Trump was the downfall. JD Vance stood for millions who believed Trump was the only one who ever told them the truth. And these two men were about to collide like thunder against steel. JD Vance did not come with insults. He came with something much heavier. Truth, from his point of view. Cold facts, sharp words. A tone that did not shake but hit hard. You call him dumb, he said, but he built towers while you read scripts. The audience gasped. Nobody had seen this coming. What looked like an ordinary talk show had turned into a battlefield. De Niro narrowed his eyes. He had faced critics before. But this time, he was up against someone who knew how to speak the language of the people. Someone who had grown up in the mud, who had seen hunger, who had climbed from the bottom. Vance's words were not polished. They were raw. And they landed like punches. The host tried to cut to commercial. Cameras kept rolling. De Niro stepped forward. Vance did not flinch. The air between them felt like fire. This was not politics anymore. This was personal. And the country was watching. Because in this moment, it was no longer about Trump. It was about something deeper. Truth versus belief, fame versus grit. And this clash, this single moment, would not just shake the room, it would divide the nation. What no one knew was how deep the roots of this clash really were. This was not the first time Robert De Niro had spoken against Trump. Over the years, he had dropped bitter words like sharp stones, each one more cutting than the last. He had called Trump a con man, a clown, even a threat to democracy. But never before had he stood on live television, looked into millions of eyes, and said it with such venom. This time, it was not a speech, it was a strike. And JD Vance took it personally. JD Vance was not just any politician. He was a man shaped by chaos, by hardship, by a childhood filled with noise and survival. He had read De Niro's words before. He had watched the interviews, heard the jokes. But standing there, under the lights, watching a man like De Niro throw insults at the leader his people believed in, that hit a nerve he could not ignore. He took the mic, voice steady but eyes blazing. He said De Niro did not understand real struggle. He said actors played pain. He lived it. His voice was not just defending Trump, it was defending every person who felt ignored, forgotten, left behind by the very world De Niro stood for. And in that moment, he flipped the energy of the room. De Niro tried to interrupt, but Vance raised a hand. Not in anger, but in command. You had the stage your whole life, Vance said. Now let someone else speak. The audience froze. Some clapped, others stayed silent. But all of them watched, hearts racing. This was not about politics anymore. This was about pain, about pride. About two Americas crashing into each other live. Vance continued. He talked about the jobs lost in Ohio, about the factories that shut down, about towns where children went to bed hungry while elites toasted wine. His voice cracked once only. Once, but he pushed through. "You call us dumb," he said. "But we remember who built this country, and it was not Hollywood." De Niro stared. For the first time he looked shaken, not defeated, but unsure. He had always spoken with fire, with certainty. But now someone stood across from him who did not fight with fame, he fought with memory. With the pain of people who never saw the cameras. The tension hung so heavy you could feel it through the screen. This was not a debate. This was a reckoning. The kind of moment people remember for decades. Because both men were not just defending opinions, they were defending entire identities. And the crowd knew this night would not be forgotten. And somewhere, in living rooms across the country, families stopped scrolling, stopped eating, stopped talking, just to listen, because something real was happening. And the story had only just begun. The air after JD Vance's words felt heavier than before. Something had shifted. De Niro, for all his legendary presence, did not reply right away. His hands, usually confident and expressive, now rested stiffly on the table. His jaw clenched. Not out of fear, but from holding back something deeper. Rage. Doubt? Maybe both. The silence between him and Vance stretched long enough to feel like its own scene. Viewers leaned in. No one knew what would happen next. Then, De Niro spoke, but his voice was not loud anymore. It was low. Controlled. Almost tired. "You think I do not know struggle?" he said, eyes locked onto Vance. "I came from nothing. A broken home. No father to guide me. I had to fight for every inch of respect in this business. So do not tell me pain. Do not act like you own it." The room stiffened again. Not because of volume, but because of truth. Both men had pain. Both men had history. But now, they were using that pain as weapons against each other. Vance fired back. "But your pain made you rich. Ours made us quiet. Until now." A line that cut deep. But this was not just personal anymore. It was turning into something far larger. America was watching itself in that moment. Two men. One shaped by art, one shaped by reality, clashing over the soul of the country. Suddenly, the moderator, who had been quiet for far too long, stepped in. His voice was calm but firm. "Gentlemen, this is not a courtroom. This is not a battlefield. This is a conversation. If we cannot talk, the country loses." Both men looked at him. Both nodded. But it was clear, this conversation had gone far beyond civil. And yet, something strange happened. Vance, who had come in with fire, lowered his tone. "You care about America?" he asked De Niro. "Then come see mine. Not New York, not the movie sets. Come see Middletown. See what is left." It was not a trap. It was an invitation. A raw, real invitation from a man who had nothing to lose. De Niro stared. His lips parted, then closed again. For a second, the tough guy image faded. In its place stood a man, older, worn, and unsure. "Maybe I will," he finally said, quiet, almost unsure. That single moment, that soft reply, made everyone watching feel something shift again. Maybe it was not just about who was right. Maybe it was about whether these two men could ever truly see each other, understand each other. And just when the tension seemed to cool, a figure from De Niro's past emerged, one who knew the actor's truth and his secrets. And they were not done yet. Her name was Anna Ricci. Most Americans had never heard of her, but Robert De Niro had. She was once his assistant, then his confidant, and then gone. She disappeared from his public life almost 20 years ago. No interviews. No articles. No social media. She had vanished without a trace until now. And she was not here for fame. She stepped into the room with no warning, no fanfare, just purpose. Eyes sharp. Voice steady. "Robert," she said. Just his name, but it landed like thunder. De Niro's face turned pale. His body froze. JD Vance turned to look at the woman, clearly unsure who she was, but immediately sensing her weight in the room. The cameras kept rolling. Anna walked closer. "You once told the world who they should listen to, who they should believe. But now I am asking you, are you ready to tell the whole truth?" Everyone sat up. De Niro opened his mouth, then closed it. His hands trembled, just slightly. "Why now?" he asked, voice dry. "Because you made this political," she replied. "And because the truth has waited long enough." JD Vance, never one to hold back, leaned forward. "What truth?" he asked. "You clearly know something." Anna did not flinch. She turned to him. "This is not about Republican or Democrat. It is about the lies people hide behind when the spotlight fades." The room fell silent again. Anna looked directly into the camera. He was not always the man you see today. Before the red carpets and the speeches, he was something else. Something raw, something honest. But along the way, he made choices. That one-word choices carried weight. Choices that, apparently, De Niro never wanted revealed. She continued. Robert stood for people, for workers, for stories that mattered. But when the studios demanded silence, he gave them what they wanted. When others were blacklisted, he stayed safe. And when it came to a film that could have exposed real corruption, he walked away. That is the man you are defending, JD. Vance stared at De Niro. Something behind his eyes shifted. De Niro finally spoke, and for the first time, his voice cracked. "You do not know everything." Anna's voice lowered. "No, but I know." Enough. The tension turned into something heavier now. Not just two ideologies clashing, but truths being unburied in real time. De Niro looked down, then up. "There are things I did not do because I was scared. Yes, scared to lose everything. And maybe I did lose the most important part myself." There it was, vulnerability, no more acting. Just a man, stripped of all defense. But just as the room absorbed that confession, Anna turned again, this time to JD Vance. "You think you understand sacrifice? Let me tell you something about your campaign, your backers, your deals. You are not clean either." The spotlight shifted again. A storm was brewing. And this time, no one would walk out unchanged. JD Vance leaned back slowly in his chair, but the silence around him felt like 1,000 voices screaming. He did not expect the fire to turn toward him. Not now, not this way. His fingers tapped against the table, searching for rhythm, for control, for anything that would stop the room from spinning. Anna did not blink. Her stare held steady, not in anger, but in something far more dangerous truth. "You were never just some small-town boy made good," she said. "You were a man chosen. By money, by machines, by people who never cared. What you believed as long as you delivered." De Niro watched carefully, his eyes narrowing. For the first time in years, he was not the only one holding secrets. JD Vance shifted in his seat. The confidence, the smirking calm, it began to melt. "You know what is worse than lying?" Anna said. "Forgetting that you ever believed in anything at all." JD's lips parted. "I do believe in something." "Then say it," she challenged. "Right here, right now. Not rehearsed, not polished. Say who you are. Not what your donors want you to be." A pause. JD hesitated, but then leaned forward. "I grew up with nothing," he said. "I saw pain, addiction, hunger. I wanted out, and I got out. Yes, I took help. Yes, I played their game. But I also tried to change it from the inside." Anna nodded. Slowly, So did I, she whispered. But the inside eats you if you are not careful. De Niro interrupted. And what about me? He asked. You think I just sat around counting money while people suffered? No, Anna said. But you forgot what made you powerful, your voice. Not your celebrity. Not your access. Just your voice. And then she turned, not to the men, but to the people watching. This is not about Trump or Biden or whoever wears the tie next. This is about the people who hold the microphones and forget what they were supposed to say. The artists, the leaders, the lawmakers, the ones we trusted. Her voice cracked. Not for effect, but because this was real. JD Vance lowered his head, then raised it again. Maybe we both got lost, he said. But maybe it is not too late. De Niro added, if there is still time, then maybe the truth can be louder than the noise. The camera zoomed in, and in that moment, 3 lives, different, broken, but still standing, shared one spotlight. Not to accuse, not to defend, but to confess. To own the damage. Outside that room, the world kept spinning. But inside, something rare had happened. Realness, vulnerability, confrontation. But it was not over. Not yet. Because someone else was watching. Someone who had remained silent. Who knew everything. And they were about to step into the story with proof that could destroy everything. The door creaked open. A slow, almost theatrical sound that cut through the tension like a knife. Every eye turned. Even the cameraman forgot to breathe. The figure stepped in, not a politician, not a star, not a name that had ever made headlines. It was Margaret. Elderly, quiet, and seemingly invisible to the political world. Margaret had once been a cleaner at the Capitol. She had walked those halls when senators whispered their darkest secrets behind closed doors. And for decades, she had kept those secrets buried. Until now. Her hand trembled slightly as she lifted an old leather notebook. It was cracked along the edges, the kind of wear that only time and truth could cause. She said nothing at first. Just walked slowly toward the center of the room. JD Vance furrowed his brow. De Niro leaned forward. Anna spoke first. Margaret? Margaret looked at her with eyes filled not with fear, but with something deeper, certainty. I saw them, she said. All of them, JD, his meetings, the donors, the favors, the promises. I cleaned the very room where it happened. You think no one sees the deals behind the speeches, but the floor always remembers. JD tried to interrupt, but Margaret raised her hand. No, not this time. She opened the notebook and began to read. October 18, 2019. Senator Vance met with 3 men from a firm with defense contracts. He promised influence in exchange for campaign support. They toasted with scotch, thinking no one was there. JD's jaw tightened. That was years ago. And yet, Margaret continued, the decisions you made after that meeting helped. Send hundreds of young soldiers into a war they should never have fought. My grandson was one of them. He never came back. Silence. Even De Niro, who had built his life calling out injustice, seemed paralyzed. Anna's face softened. This was no longer a game. This was grief. This was real. Margaret's voice did not rise. It did not need to. You used your story, JD, your pain, your background to sell trust. And then you sold that trust to the highest bidder. JD's hands were shaking now. I was trying to help my people. I did what I thought was right in a broken system. Margaret closed the notebook. Maybe, but every broken system is held together by people who say they are just trying to survive. The weight of her words settled like dust. Heavy. Still. Robert De Niro finally broke the silence. So what now? What do we do with all this? Margaret looked directly into the lens of the camera. Tell the truth. Even if it costs you everything. Especially then. Outside, storm clouds gathered, not metaphorically but literally. As if nature itself had been waiting for someone to speak this truth. Inside, JD Vance stood, slowly, uneasily. His next move would not just define his future, but possibly the future of everyone watching. JD Vance stood like a man whose foundation had crumbled beneath him. The silence inside the chamber felt louder than any scream. His eyes met Margaret's, no longer defiant, but exposed. He looked at Robert De Niro, then to Anna, then to the sea of reporters, staffers, and viewers whose lives had stopped mid-breath, watching this unfold. Finally, JD spoke. "I never expected this day to come like this. Not with cameras. Not with witnesses. But maybe this is how the truth always arrives, when you least expect it, and when you can no longer outrun it." The room remained frozen. JD continued, his voice cracking, but firm. "Yes, I made deals. I told myself it was for the people. I believed I could outsmart the system from inside it. But I became part of it instead." He paused and looked directly at Margaret. "I am sorry. Your grandson deserved better, they all did." Robert De Niro crossed his arms, watching intently. "And what are you going to do about it?" JD stepped forward. "I will resign. Today." Gasps filled the room. Anna's eyes widened. Even De Niro blinked, stunned. No spin, no justification, just a fall raw and real. JD turned to the cameras. "And I will testify. I will tell everything I know about the meetings, the money, the strings that keep America tied down while pretending it is free." One by one, phones buzzed as the world reacted in real time. Newsrooms exploded. Headlines were drafted before he finished speaking. But JD did not flinch. He was not speaking for the press. He was speaking for someone else now, perhaps, even. For the first time, De Niro slowly nodded. "You lost your way. But maybe this is how you begin to find it." But just as JD stepped down, another figure emerged from the shadows. Senator Mallory, older, more seasoned, more dangerous than JD ever was. She clapped, slow and cold. "Well done, JD," she said. "Very noble, very tragic. But make no mistake, your confession means nothing if the rest of us stay standing." JD's face went pale. Anna looked to De Niro. "What does she mean?" Mallory smiled. JD was never the only one. He was just the first to fall. And in this town, the first to fall is usually the last to be remembered. The room shifted again. Just when the truth seemed to have won, darkness crept back in. The story was not over. Not even close. But Margaret stepped forward once more. Then let the rest fall too. And suddenly, others in the room stood. Former aides. Low-level staffers. Quiet people who had stayed silent for years. One by one, they raised their voices. "I saw it too. I was there. It happened." A movement had begun. Not in the streets, not on screens, but in the hearts of those who had seen too much and stayed quiet for too long. Robert De Niro looked out the window, where the storm had broken. Maybe this is how America changes, not in fire, not in blood, but in truth.